welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And with me, Robbie.
And this week we are delving into the back catalogue of Mr. John Carpenter with a long overdue look for both of us, having never seen this one before, in the Mouth of Madness, or as I kept calling it consistently, the Mountains of
Madness, yeah.
Which I believe you said, is that the book?
I think that's the story.
In the story or an actual book?
In the actual book by H.P. Lovecraft. I think it's Mountains of Madness.
Yes, that is right. That's where I got that from. It's the H.P. Lovecraft. I was more aware of that, I think, than the name of this film. So I just kept thinking it was Mountains, and Mountains for some reason made more sense to me than the Mouth of Madness. I don't know.
I don't know. I think I get the idea now. Now I've watched it, and now I know it's Mouth of Madness. But the film is basically like, what if H.P. Lovecraft was about these days and was a nutter, and a massive racist, you know?
And what about what if basically the cult of H.P. Lovecraft, basically, the people that follow you, the people that what if he could bring his creations to life as well?
Yeah. But we were saying that this is from one of the GOATs, John Carpenter, and it was the first watch for kind of both of us, and astute listeners of the Cast Me to Hell podcast, the Cast Me to Hell franchise, will actually be aware that a couple of episodes ago we briefly mentioned In the Mouths of Madness, and we briefly were like, we should cover that maybe. So we are now covering it because we both went away from that recording just agreeing to do it. We're both massive John Carpenter fans, love his movies, love his style of films, but this was a first watch for both of us, and it was one that I'd heard about. I'd kind of heard the line, like, do you read Sutter Cane? I'd seen pictures, and I'd seen like screenshots
and stuff like that. Because we'd also covered Event Horizon previously.
Yeah.
Go check it out. But and there's a part in this where Sam Neill has a very similar looking part that I think maybe it was borrowed into Event Horizon with the crosses over his body, but they're drawn in this one, and they're sliced in. But I feel like that's a link that can't be it's not just coincidental. I feel like someone had watched, obviously, Sam Neill a little bit more and be like, I'm going to steal from John Carpenter a little bit. But I'd seen the same image, the image of the drawn ones on him, kind of thing, because I remember when I was watching Event Horizon, I was like, I'd seen pictures where it was drawn on you. And I was like, oh no, it's a different film.
I also find it really weird that I've really warmed to Sam Neill, because until like relatively the past like few years, I'd pretty much only known him for Jurassic Park.
You don't, Alan Grant.
Alan Grant. And I'll be completely honest. Yeah, it's a classic, but I always thought Sam Neill was absolutely dog shit in that film. I don't know whether it's the character. I don't know whether he's overbloomed by the sexual man that is Jeff Goldblum. But I always thought that he was kind of poo in it, for lack of a better word. And then I saw him in Peaky Blinders, and I was like, Sam Neill's good. Then I saw him in Event Horizon, and I was like, he's kind of cool. And then I saw him in this, and I was like, I kind of vibe with Sam Neill now. You know? He's kind of got he can play kind of mad, and he can play quite interesting characters.
He has quite a range. I think that's why. I think in Jurassic Park he's meant to be this kind of wooden kind of character.
Yeah,
he's meant to be playing the wooden art, like of the arc of the people involved. He's meant to be like the uptight one. So I think it's out of the other characters, he's the hardest to warm to. I think that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
Because he's meant to be the one that's like, he's out of all of them, the one that you would leave with the kids is not him. Kind of thing.
Yeah.
And not for Eddie Diddler.
Not for Diddler. Let's not get that out.
No. If in that case, you just would leave them with... damn, I've blanked on his name now. Who's the guy who's also in Seinfeld, who's in Jurassic Park, the fat guy that gets eaten?
Nedry.
Nedry, yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember his name. His actual acting, his real name.
No, not his acting name, that's what I mean. I was trying to remember his name in Seinfeld, to be honest.
Newman.
Newman, that's the one. I was going to call him Newman, and then I blanked on it. I was like, that.
Yeah.
So, this is...
this is 90s Carpenter.
1994.
As well, which is an interesting period, because... this is kind of towards the twilight of John Carpenter's career, let's be honest. Bust onto the scene massively with Halloween. I think he did like Dark Star before, and then he did, back to back churning out classics. I kind of think that he did some absolutely banging films during the 80s. And then you get to like late 80s. Prince of Darkness was one that we mentioned. I haven't watched it yet, but it seems to be that almost like Prince of Darkness onwards. You then get to the 90s where you have In the Mouths of Madness, but then you also have Escape from LA.
Do you want me to give you the list in order?
Let's
I got it in front of me, so I might as well. So 1974 Dark Star, then Assault on Precinct 13, banger.
Yeah.
Halloween, banger. The Fog, great. Escape from New York,
banger.
Great. The Thing, amazing.
Banger.
Christine, yeah, pretty damn good. Starman, I'd mentioned that a few episodes ago.
Yeah.
Let's beat them to beat the
dog shit death, yeah.
And then Big Trouble in Little China. People don't like that one quite as much. But
I think it's fun.
Prince of Darkness was actually 87. So that one was still within the 80s. Which I said I have seen, but I have mainly forgotten. Which I don't think, because most John Carpenter films I remember pretty clearly. So I don't think that's an amazing quote on that one. And I know that wasn't part, but that counted as the first part of the Apocalypse trilogy.
I think The Thing did, didn't it?
Was it The Thing? Was
The
Thing
Thing.
The first part?
The Thing,
The Thing,
Prince of Darkness,
and then Mouth of Madness?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, that makes sense, because there are lots of things in the Mouth of Madness that are very Thing-like.
Yeah.
Then, in 88, they did They Live.
Banger.
1992, Memoirs of an Invisible Man. I've never heard of that.
I've heard of it, but I think it's like a comedy.
Okay.
Yeah. I think like Chevy Chase in it, I don't know.
And then after Mountains of Madness in 94, he did Village of the Damned in 95. And then we're getting back onto Escape from LA, Vampires, Ghost War. And
I like vampires.
So lots of good ones, but people, they definitely are ones that went from like, I mean, let's be honest, pretty much right through from the 70s to the mid 80s. Probably, I think, Big Trouble in Little China or Starman, the one I mentioned before, or possibly Christine, because there are some people that are mixed on Christine. That's around the time they started to go a little bit mixed in kind of their ability.
He was slinging dong for a long time.
By the 90s, they were definitely getting very, pretty much all of his 90s ones, I think most people would say, are mixed bags. And then there are people that love them. They Live is obviously a cult classic, but wasn't loved at its time.
No.
And then, lots of these ones, and including this one, Mouths of Madness, it was a flop at the box office. It did not do well. It had a budget of 8 million, but some people would say 8 to 14 million. Yeah. But it only made 8 million. So it made back what they thought it did, but really technically it didn't make its money.
It did make it.
And sadly, that is what started to happen with John Carpenter films, though. Well, he did have a string. Most of his 90s ones were a string of flops.
It's a shame.
Village of the Damned, Ghosts of Mars, I think they were all flops, sadly. And they all kind of have, as I said, they weren't quite as full, there was with those early 70s and 80s ones, there was something that felt like a real eye for what he was doing. A real, like, I don't know, he was really specific in certain parts. There was just moments where he'd let them breathe and take their time and things like that. Some of the later ones feel much more like they're rushed, like he's just kind of putting them out there kind of thing. And they're still good films. I still think there's not actually many bad films on that list, the ones I've seen. But I definitely always felt that some of the later ones definitely feel a little bit more like they're engaging, fun, but they're not quite of those early 80s ones or those 70s, those 80s ones, or Halloween or The Thing or the big hitters kind of thing. They're not quite there. They're not quite as character driven, or they're a little bit more cheesy, some of them, especially Ghost of Mars.
I haven't seen it yet.
Have you not seen Ghost of Mars?
No, I've heard bad things.
I watched that loads when I was a kid, but it is a cheese fest of a film. It is, it is a proper I think that one was 2000, but it's a proper 2000 kind of film. Really? It's like on a spacecraft. Kind of almost Jason X, kind of like a little bit like that. Not as bad, not like in some ways as bad as that, but it's got like Ice Cube and stuff like that.
Yeah, I know Ice Cube.
But it's an odd one. That one, it's got an odd like taste to it.
Yeah. I mean, but this film, I mean, I found that it was mostly a really good film. I thought I was massively into it. I think even from the beginning, going into it, knowing that it's about effectively cosmic horror, which is always very tricky to do when it comes to films. I think when you're doing it through a book or something like that, it's a lot easier of a medium to get it across, I think. But when it comes to films, particularly, I think it can be a bit of a struggle. But I kind of feel that this film did it really well. From the opening, where we get the printing of the book, in the Mouths of Madness. And we get John Carpenter doing the score, but it's got away from that kind of synth that he's famous for, and it's a bit more like rocky guitar, which is a bit of a bop.
I really enjoyed the soundtrack of this film. It was a proper straight, and I think I messaged you saying one thing I can say so far is that the soundtrack film feels a bit like a banger kind of thing. Yeah. It was straight in. I remember just bopping along to that kind of thing as we kind of get to that first kind of Sam Neill being dragged into the psychiatric. Yeah. It's kind of one of the first, you see the book created, but then we kind of jumping forward a bit to the end kind of thing in a way. But and we're seeing him being dragged in, and we see John Glover, another actor,
Big Glover,
who's for a few of his kind of horror roles and things like that. He is the kind of cheesy psychiatrist that's kind of there, who I thought seemed a little bit out of place just at that scene. But then in comes Sam Neill, and he's not exactly going totally serious with it. He's definitely in a mad kind of a bit hammy with it.
Yeah, he has that fun.
There's a little bit of that kind of thing, which works because it's different from what he is in the most of the film. Because most of the film, he's quite a serious kind of character who's trying to take everything. Not that he doesn't have his little fun moments.
He's a bit cheeky.
He likes to play his little pranks occasionally and things like that because he's a bit full of himself as a character. He's not the most likable of characters, definitely early on.
I think this is very something that kind of flows through a lot of John Carpenter characters. They are a lot of the times they're really cool, but they're not that great of people, or they're not particularly the nicest people. If you think about Snake Plissken's, he's cool as fuck, but he's kind of he's a bit of a bellend. Even Tom Atkins in The Fog is a bit of a prick. You get Rowdy Roddy Piper in They Live is a bit of a prick. They're all kind
flawed
of
characters.
Flawed characters. Yeah. But they kind of have this coolness to them, and I think Sam Neill did.
It works with this kind of one because of the kind of tale it's kind of telling.
Yeah,
it's kind of a bit of in my head thinking a bit like a Wicker Man kind of thing. The kind of person who's kind of going is quite flawed and might not be that likable, but then at the same time, I think even from early on in this film, because obviously you get this tease at the beginning that he's being dragged into a psychiatric, and then we're going to go back to find out why. From straight away, it's kind of you may not want to like this person.
No.
There may be reasons why you shouldn't like this person, but it definitely draws you in. So obviously, he is he's an insurance investigator.
Yeah,
and it's odd because obviously we get those teasers straight away of how Sutton's books.
Yeah.
The writer Sutter Cane, who is our kind of our main. I don't really know what to call him. We could say villain in a way, but he's not quite. There's a
kind of is. He's an antagonist.
Yeah. We get these kind of little teasers about how the world is being affected by these books. That one of those first bits when we first meet Sam Neill as the insurance investigator. When he's talking to his friend across the table, I thought was quite an interesting scene.
In the diner?
In the diner.
Oh, the diner was awesome.
The diner scene. It was kind of missing. I'm skipping so.
I mean, but that's what we did.
But this was the first kind of key bit that I thought that really popped into my head, where you can slowly see the guy over the street.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool, and the whole film kind of has that John Carpenter vibe to it, color wise, how it's shot.
Yeah.
And that was a very John Carpenter thing to do. You have a conversation between people, and then you get the Axeman in the back kind of walking up to them, and it's all kind of one single shot.
Yeah.
And it's really fucking class. And then he smashes it, and he's like, do you read Sutter Cane? And he's got the fucking deformed eyes.
Yeah, it's the way that everyone else around is like, you can see them starting to part and run, and these two guys are just so like involved in their conversation. Or kind of Sam Neill's character is actually kind of being a little bit like braggy about how good he is at getting
he's
his
talking
man.
about how good he is
and he's on a little bit of a kind of almost a little bit of tangent going on a bit about himself while this guy's getting closer and closer and closer.
Yeah.
There you go. Kind of, I guess you can test the audience. Maybe we want this guy to get an axe in his head.
Yeah, but it does make you think, like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
It's a nice little
setup. The window smashing, the police shooting the guy in the head.
Yeah.
Just shooting him down dead. Like, you're just like, what the fuck? And they didn't even know what was coming. They didn't even see the mass of it. And it gives us that first scene of who the fuck is Sutter Cane?
And then finding out that he's the agent.
Yeah.
That's when I was like, okay, like, this is really weird. Because, like I said, I'd heard the line, do you read Sutter Cane? But I didn't really, like, going into the film, I didn't know anything about it. Watching it, as I kind of watched it more and more, I kind of started to think, all right, I kind of see where this is going now. Becoming a slightly kind of a bit predictable. But the opening, when they're kind of establishing Sutter Cane and a lot of these conversations they have, until about 2/3 of the way through when we actually meet him, are basically like talking about the effect that he has on people. Like, his book, his books have caused people to be fucking terrified, and his books have caused people to do like weird shit. And then you kind of
when we meet
Linda, that's
so we got Sam Neill's is John Trent, and Linda Stiles is the main. I don't know, the main lady for him to bounce off.
Yeah.
And there's quite a lot of that, because quite a lot of those early scenes are basically like him kind of being a bit like, why should I be doing this? Why
it's the classic
why would I go after to try and find him?
Well, I think...
Or she's kind of... You don't realise how popular his is, do you? You don't realise how... And even she's giving an idea of, like, it's insanity. Out of, like, all of the books we publish, this one is, like, 100 times more successful. Like, it leads to people being... so feverishly drawn in by this man. Like, what is going on? Like,
they keep referencing Stephen King. They're like, he blows Stephen King out of the water. And I think the interesting dynamic is that you Linda Stiles is like such a believer that he's gone missing, and almost in like the power of his work. They keep saying like there's riots because people can't get hold of the book yet. There's already they're already making the movie, but we don't even have the finished book.
Yeah,
and it's kind of like the more that she talks about how elusive he is. He's disappeared. He said half the book and then vanished. And he's like, well, they're doing this as an insurance claim. He's probably not even writing the book. Yeah. I'm going to find him to prove them wrong. He's so kind of... It's similar to the main character in The Wicker Man. He's kind of like so headstrong in his convictions and so having to be right, and this is how you do it, and believing in himself so much that's ultimately what kind of dooms him, is the fact that he's like, well, I'm going to go find this guy and prove it's a hoax, prove everything wrong. His books aren't that good.
Yeah, because he has this consistent belief of basically not believe that you just generally shouldn't believe people in general, like that people are liars. People will lie and distrustful, and they will keep things from you. And I'll find out what it is that he's keeping from them. It's always interesting because there's also that little bit of the way he talks about them is talking about them like they're that, but then he also is kind of judgmental about the fact that basically the only reason they're there is because he's not there to finish the book to make them more money. They don't really care about so much about the man as they do about the money. How much money is that, like, this guy going to make you, kind of thing. That's what you care about, isn't it? And that's why I'm here. But then at the same time, he's also there like, I'm going to fucking find him and I'm going to make you that money. I'm going to get you that money back, or we're going to get that money back.
I love when he buys the books and he starts reading it. And it's almost like as he starts to read the books, and I think like Sutter Cane has done 6 books or something. The main one that they keep referring to is Hobbes, the horror in Hobbes or something like that. But one scene that I thought was really fucking class is when he starts to have this kind of weird dream. And we get the first kind of bending in reality almost when he's like walking through shithole New York as well, you know. It's the 90s, like it's still a shithole.
Yeah.
Until like Seinfeld was in its prime, I think that's how New York was maybe.
Yeah,
it's just like heroin needles everywhere, shithole, police beating homeless men off.
That's just what it is. I'm pretty sure, to be fair, I don't think it's necessarily shithole. I think in horror it's still a shithole. New York is like the pit of hell.
It looks alright in Scream, you know, it kind of looked alright.
Yeah, it's alright, I guess. But there's still people getting murdered in alleys.
Yeah,
but pretty normal.
Yeah, maybe. But we get that weird dream where he's like witnessing the homeless guy get battered.
Yeah, that's
and then,
so bizarre. Like those the returning to that kind of constant nightmare. The fact that you keep seeing people that are kind of unclear and you can't tell who they are. The police officer, at first you don't get to see him directly. You just see that he's beating up a guy for no reason, and he keeps having these. It's always related to something that's like something that would be unjust, kind of thing. And he keeps imagining that same scene again and again and again. It's quite effective, I thought, in that scene, especially as it goes on and that scene gets more like the more you find out about it, the more it starts to get weirder. With revealing more about like what the cop looks like and bits like that, revealing his face being mangled, and you know,
his face is fucked up, and then you get like the weird like villagers coming down the alley as well.
Which is linked to the same time that kind of is happening in the town when they arrive in the town.
It's all really weird, and then that scare got me when he's back in his flat asleep, and then like you're like, oh, okay, the dream's over, and then the cop sat next to him. You know, the double fake out. I'm quite prone to that, unfortunately. Like I kind of lower my guard and then get got again. I like the map part as well, you know, where he looks at the books and then he kind of like rips off the cover and he makes the map, and it all kind of, in my head, it all kind of feeds into, at least for Sam Neill's character, this idea that they're kind of like trying to test him, and he's like, well, I fucking cracked that he's put the map of New England, you know, and I'm going to find him in this town.
The New Hampshire is the location because that's what Hobbs End, which is a fictional setting in the thing, but he's like, I think that this is where he manages to solve his little puzzle, because he is the genius that is Sam Neill.
He is.
Not the character, just Sam Neill.
Just Sam Neill said, I know what's going on here.
So, I get... That bit's bizarre, and obviously those keep building as they go, because Linda ends up joining him on the journey, which, because it's a John Carpenter film, and maybe it's just because I'm used to ones with Tom Atkins, I just
he's got
waiting for when's the fuck coming.
Yeah, when they pipe him.
When they pipe it, because it's always John Carpenter still likes to add in a little bit of pipe.
A little bit of pipe.
Not in everyone, but like quite often when it's the style of this kind of one felt like, when's the piping?
Yeah, when's this piping coming? You know, I'm prepared for piping.
But Linda, continuing with the bizarre bizarre kind of phenomena that they kind of mentioned, that you mentioned a second ago, when they're driving through the night.
Yeah.
So obviously, it's like she starts to.
She sees she's driving through the night because she swaps over.
The person on the bike. That's what I was saying.
And then you see like this little boy on the bike, and then they drive past him.
Yeah.
They overtake the little boy, and then as they keep driving, an old man on the bike drives past them, and it's really weird.
It is, because it's a really weird... The makeup as well. The makeup looked to me like... it looked like Grandpa out of Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
That's what I was kind of thinking.
Wig on.
Yeah.
It looked a bit like that. It looked like... It was like, well, that's obviously not actual...
It's
not some actual face. That's like a mask that's coming over. But I was like, at the same time, I was like, that just... Yeah, it looks like you've just hit Grandpa out of Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah.
just driving down on the way past the house. They just drive past the house, and you just see Leatherface in the back.
Yeah.
Damn Grandpa.
That bit was awesome, man. I thought it was really cool. I thought, because it starts the build of like, this is fucking weird, and I think when you're looking at like cosmic horror, it's kind of got to be head scratching. It's got to be like,
it should be confusing. And to be fair, to say these kind of films don't often tend to actually do that well anyway, because general public audiences tend to be a bit like, what the fuck's I'm not like they lose interest quite quickly. Like a lot of this style of horror where it's very complex or like one thing after the other, they're the kind of ones that do end up being divisive films, because people either like this kind of thing and they can get into it, or they're just like, what the fuck is that?
And that's the thing, it's very much like, what the fuck is this?
And if you also think about it from that context of this being like a continuing of like a, you know, it's not an actual trilogy, but they're lightly linked kind of trilogy kind of thing. But, you know, if people had heard like, oh yeah, this is related to things like The Thing or things like that, then they're going to be. That's also going to drive people to be a bit more like, this is not what I wanted to see. I want to see like the dog appears.
Yeah, where's the dog?
Tearing the world apart, kind of thing.
I mean, we do see a dog scene, which is really funny.
Yeah, we do.
But like when I love the old man on the bike scene, and then they suddenly cut to day.
Yeah,
and they've just arrived. They drive over that like classic. Don't forget
Sam Neill being a naughty boy by waking her up in a. He gets what does he get?
He does something, doesn't he?
He just. I was about to say he gets like an air horn out.
I think it's an air horn.
I think it's an air horn.
I don't know why Sam Neill has an air horn.
I just remember him having a little cheeky grin on it.
Yeah, he was a cheeky boy.
Oh, I've been a cheeky boy, but I'm gonna get this air horn out and wake this lady up because I don't like her, even though I definitely want to fuck her.
Yeah, definitely. I was like, they're gonna fuck. Like,
he's definitely there. Like he's like, I'm gonna play with you, and it is in that kind of like pulling your pigtails kind of way. Like, he messes with her, but at the same time, like I think even before they leave, there's like a moment by the elevator when it's like they get oddly close, because he's like, basically like, you annoy the fuck out of me, but would you like to come home? Would you like to go out with me tonight?
Would you like to make love? I hate you.
And she's just like, God no. And then it's like, yeah,
well, we're a John Carpenter.
Like, you're in my car now, so you're gonna fuck at some point.
Yeah, it's the implication, you know.
I actually can't remember if they do.
I can't. I don't think they do.
I don't think they do. So if you were expecting that build, it's not coming.
I like when they get to Hobbs, you know, and it's just empty. And Linda Stiles is like, oh, this is, I can't believe where we are. It's like, you know, this is the town from the book, and she kind of starts to see like, well, this is where
it's
this
like
would be.
Fangirl, isn't she?
Yeah, and then he's like, nah, you fucking, you're putting my leg.
It is basically completely deserted, because I thought it was really effective, because obviously they drive all the way like through the town. I might be wrong, you might see one or two people, but I don't think it's until after they actually see that they start to go back into the town that they start to see people pop up. It's as if everyone was avoiding, but I guess that could be because we get later where we get kind of people that are coming up in like a big mob of people that are coming. So I guess they were all gathering together somewhere to pour out the church hall or something.
So it's so weird.
But what's really effective is when they first get up to that and they arrive and they see the manor of Sutter Cane, and they get out the car and they start to go towards up the steps, and they're like as if like nothing's quite right here. Then we get the mob that start to arrive around them. I
don't think that's yet.
Is that not yet?
No, that's later.
Do they go into the.
They go into the.
Happen pretty quick with the mob.
No, they go into the air. I was about to say they go to the Airbnb. They go to their Airbnb. They go to the motel, and Linda Stiles is like, "Oh wow, this is exactly how it was in the in the book, the Hobbs Horror, or the Horror at Hobbs." Then she's like, "This is old Miss Baxter. She kills her husband," and. He's like, nah, not that old bit. It's just like an old woman, like a sweet old woman. They go upstairs, and she's like,
I remember this happening after. I thought they'd visited Sutter Cane's building. Then when they hadn't gone anywhere, then they went to the motel afterwards.
Because this is what
see things like the old lady has the man.
No, that's on the way.
Hinged up underneath and things like that.
Because what happens is they're in the hotel room, and he said, well, you've left like one detail out, because I've been reading those books as well. I've been studying them, and he keeps referring to Sutter Cane as being like a hack and his writing not being great and that sort of stuff. And he's like, outside of the window, it would be like the I think he calls it like the Black Church, because it's it's like made out of like black brick, and it's got like those kind of like dome style roofs. And he opens the window and it's not there. And she's like, well, it was on the east side. And then when she opens the window, the church is there. And then that's when they go. And there's something like, they try and get into the church, they can't get in there. Then the mob turn up and they're like, give me the little boy back or something.
Yeah, I was going to say, all of that bit felt like it played out over a fairly longer bit to get to that point, actually. But
yeah, I sped through it.
On the bit I'm looking at here, it's very much glossed over completely.
It is.
It pretty much goes from that to the guy that's in the mob committing suicide, which I felt was a much bigger point from getting to town to get into that. But what I'm reading here is completely glossed over that part.
Yeah,
they're like, that bit doesn't matter.
Because
doesn't matter about meeting Sutter Cane. Yeah, it doesn't matter about
no, of course not. Because when they're leaving, that's when he sees something in the painting, and you hear like the whimper, and he goes up to the old woman, and she's like, "Yep, I'll see you later, whatever." And then the camera pans down, and you see like the naked old man like handcuffed to her leg, and you're like, "What the fuck is going on?"
Yeah, I was
really weird.
The lady playing that is the grandmother in Happy Gilmore.
Yes,
no, not Happy Gilmore.
She's
Billy. No, it's Happy Gilmore.
Happy
Gilmore. Yeah, she was from Happy Gilmore. And also the man I mentioned, who is the leader of said mob, who is also the man who I mentioned who commits suicide in the bar later on. I noticed him straight away because he has such a weird looking face. He's an odd looking man. Because he is from Ghostbusters 2, you know, the villain who is in the painting.
I've never seen Ghostbusters 2.
You've never seen Ghostbusters 2?
I've seen the villain in the painting, but I didn't realise it's
him. It's the same man. I was just there. I couldn't stop staring at him. I was like, why do you look so weird and so familiar at the same time? Have you haunted me in my dreams?
Yeah.
It was like, oh no, you are from Ghostbusters 2. So many recognisable faces in small roles, and his isn't. Oddly, like, he pops up for that, but yes, he does then kind of warn, like Trent or Sam Neill, I've just been referring to the whole time.
Yeah, which is cool, Sam Neill.
He warns him to basically get out of this town.
Yeah.
Get out of this town, you are going to be doomed if you stay here. And then just, like, blows his head off with a shotgun.
Well, we get the really weird dog scene as well, don't we? You know?
What's the...
So they turn up, the mob turn up at the church... Styles and Sam Neill are like, we need to fucking skedaddle. So they leave,
get out of here.
And then they confront Sutter Cane, and like the doors to the church kind of like suddenly open, and he's got like a 5 kill streak, so he calls in the dogs, you know? And then just like a bunch of like Doberman start attacking everyone, and it's in like slow motion, and it's fucking weird. It's just really weird.
And he's just
feels so out of place.
It does, yeah, because it also kind of feels like, I don't know, because you know that obviously there's something wrong with, like, you know, Sutter Cane, you know there's something more to him kind of thing. But it's not exactly like straight away laid all out there kind of thing, but that kind of straight away makes him completely like, yeah, so it's fine. Like, obviously the whole town is against him, so you know that he's a bad guy, but it's like, yeah, I can just lay my dogs on you. I can have my dogs tear you to pieces if I want them to.
But the weird thing is they've all got shotguns, but nobody takes a shot at the dogs. And I think there's an equal amount of man versus dog. So I'd have at least taken 2 shots, you know?
I mean, even if I'm not taking a shot at the dog, I'd be taking a shot at the one who just unleashed them upon me. Take a shot at Sutter Cane.
Maybe, 1 shot at him, dead eye, 1 shot at him, and then 1 shot at the dog, you know?
But instead, they just... kill themselves.
They
don't, but I'm not like that. That's the kind of act that they basically go on to basically just kill themselves. So they might as well have just gone, fuck. Let's just turn them on ourselves, lads. Let's kill each other.
Because I think like that's the problem when when you're trying to go on your own notes that you make. The notes on mine are very vague. So I've got like the old man on the bike is so weird. The church in the window is great.
I did just notice that the old man on the bike apparently is meant to be an aged version of Saturn. So that's why he looks like that. So he's got the same hair.
Sutter Cane.
That's why he's got the long hair. So it's meant to be her seeing like an aged or dying Sutter Cane, basically, that she's killing him in some way, or she's taking life from him or something.
Okay. I just thought, because he's like, he won't let me go. I thought it was just like, this kid's just got to ride a bike.
Yeah, just old man.
Because that's like the...
just mowing down an old man, which I guess is a bad enough thing to do.
Yeah. Well, do you remember we spoke about this on a previous episode? I think it might have been during The Exorcist Believer. We defended it, so, go and check it out if you haven't watched it. And I mentioned during that one of the things that kind of like terrifies me is like this existential dread of like, what if when I die, it's not just fucking game over? What if something else is there? Yeah. So I find stuff like
not
this.
Not something good.
Yeah, not something good. What if they're like, you know what, Rob? You were a bit of a prick. Like, you now have to be...
Your testicles are now going in this vice for a
your testicles are going in the vice. You have to put hot, lead down your urethra. Because, why? Because I said so, Or you have to just fall forever.
We've got this nice hot pipe, and you know
where
it's
going. This nice hot pipe, yeah, you know where it's going. We're Richard III in you.
Yeah, exactly, Richard III. That's who I was thinking of then. I was like, I can't remember which one it was in my head.
Rip King.
Yes.
So this this idea of there being like something greater is terrifying to me. So like parts of this film did really freak me out. Like this whole idea of just like eternal damnation. This idea of like there being something that like the reason why I'm struggling to put it into words is because you can't. The whole idea of
it's this is the struggle I think with this film is that it's a lot of quick scenes to put them into description to describe every part, because it kind of just goes past kind of thing in your mind. It's a lot of scenes, and there is a lot of scenes then building up to these scenes kind of thing. But then there's a lot of conversations. It's always hard when it's mainly you're describing. You can't really describe the conversations of characters that clearly. So the film is a lot of either like kind of slower moments of discussing what's happening, or moments of madness, basically. Moments where your brain is seeing these images in these things happening. And I think that's part of what is like blocking in my head. That I remember like the visual parts, but I'm struggling with actually what led them kept them together.
Well, you mentioned before we recorded, that's kind of one of the problems you had with the film. Well, I don't know whether problem's the right word, not to put words in your mouth.
No, it kind of is. It's and it's what I said with Prince of Darkness actually, is that the fact that I remember scenes and I remember certain parts of it. Yeah. But as a cohesive whole, I don't remember being like, oh yeah, I was fully drawn in by that or fully like interested in that. This one, definitely had some amazing parts when I was really drawn in by the visuals, but there was a lot of stuff that put it together, and at points I think I was kind of losing interest in, or it felt like it was kind of covering ground. I felt like I was like, yeah, well, I got that.
Okay.
Like I liked the visual part of it, but yeah, there's definitely art, and as it got further towards and it got more into it, there definitely were some surprises that I didn't actually expect in this film, because I got to be honest, I expected a lot of this. From the tone I got at the start, the action stuff was like good at the start, but from the tone I got at the start, it felt like it was going to be a very human, existential with the extra kind of visions of bad things. But then we did add in some, as I said earlier, there are some Thing kind of inspired parts that I was really like, yes, this is very like this is a nice added like part into this film.
Well, I would say that the halfway point kind of is when that kind of starts to kick in. So
when the town turns again, like when they're actually actively trying to be like, how do we get out of here? And as Sam Neill's character starts to go, actually gets to the point when it's like, here's the proper madness coming. That's when I was kind of a bit more back in kind of thing. I lost it a little bit in the middle.
Well, Linda goes to see Sutter Cane, and he knows her as her agent, but we see this like giant door which is like banging, and it's like got like it's all like slime coming from it, and he basically says like, all of this time when I was writing, I thought it was kind of just my ideas, but I was actually like a conduit almost for these higher power, these greater things, and this book is going to be like the masterpiece. This is what's going to usher them in effectively. And then he forces her to see, like, to read the book. And you get that weird kind of like deformed monster on the back of his head.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like, that's the conduit, it's like talking to him, it's like driving him. And then she's like, I've seen this. Like, I know that my part, I've seen everything that happens, and I know that my part is now done. And imagine, like, the terror of that is, imagine if somebody was just like, oh, Seb, mate, you're done. Like, you've done everything. It. Your life is done.
This is your only
mate.
part that matters now. You are finished.
The whole reason of your life.
Your existence
is now over.
Yeah.
You just got to be here now.
You've achieved your goal.
Can't do anything.
You've got nothing else to do.
Yeah, and that's when she's like, well...
I mean, in this situation, it's much scarier. If someone told me in general in life, I mean, there's two ways to take that. Because in one way, in this situation, I'm like, right, I'm done. Does that mean for her, it's like, does that mean I'm about to be dead? Because you're about to kill me because I have no purpose for you anymore, or you're about to sell my dog on you, or send some creature in to get me, or send me through that gooey ass door. Yeah, you know what I mean. But but in the other side of that, if someone right now came down and be like, "You've achieved your goals, you're done." If you're in a comfortable place with that, then you're like, all right then.
All right, that's it. I'm clocking off.
I'm going off somewhere. I'm going to live my life. Apparently, I don't have to do anything anymore. I'm done, mate.
Yeah, but that's it. Like, that's the point where things start to get weird, because from then, Sam Neill tries to come to, like, find Sutter Cane. Sutter Cane's like, yeah, you were supposed to come here. Like, I wrote you as a character to come here. And then he's like, your mission is to now take the thing back.
Yeah.
And that's when I think, like,
take the
manuscript back.
Yeah, take the manuscript, take the messages basically with you to spread to the rest kind of thing.
And then we get, like, the shots of them kind of coming through the door and chasing after him, which I felt, I don't know, I kind of, like, half of me is really, I'm kind of torn on this scene, because I was thinking, part of it is like, okay, it's cool, I like the idea, I like that it's very, like, quick shots. We don't properly see what they are. It's very quick shots of, like, boggling eyes and slime and teeth and stuff. But then we do get some bits where it almost looks a bit like Saturday morning cartoon almost. It's a bit like, I'd have seen this on, like, Power Rangers, you know?
Yeah.
Like men in suits.
It is a little bit more, whereas with the design and with the way they look, it is a little bit more like than, say, The Thing, when it was very, like, either human bodies distorted, or when it wasn't, if you saw it in any other form, it tended to be quite distorted anyway, so it wasn't, like, fully on show at certain points, and when it was mainly when a human's body was being, like, changed or something. So that's kind of what made it effective, whereas here it's kind of like you've got kind of monsters that kind of look a little bit like they're kind of fucked up and twisted up a little bit like those kind of creatures. But yeah, when you see them in, like, full shots, they do it is a little bit like we haven't quite got the effects to pull this off completely as I wanted to be, because we're only using it because it's not like they're a huge part of the film throughout.
No.
So it does feel like they were like, well, we can't really afford to make them, like, amazing because they're not, like, the main point of the film kind of thing. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And to show them kind of, like, destroys the purpose of having, like, cosmic horrors that predate, humanity, that your mind can't really comprehend.
Yeah.
Showing them too much is kind of a bit like, where do we go?
Yeah.
But then you see, like, when he, creeps into the basement and he sees the old bint from the hotel, like, morphing and eating her husband. That's really cool. We see Styles even gets, like, some kind of, like, squirming tentacle taking her in the bathroom, which is cool. And we get, like, this is where the weirdness starts to ramp up. Kind of
weirdness, not full on, like, body horror like we've seen previously, but still, like, little mutations that kind of add a little aspect, and that's what I mean. The town kind of feels like it's going well, mad in like that. It feels like it's kind of falling apart. Everything's kind of going a bit to disaster kind of zone, where each place that he's seeing is kind of worse than it even was before. Even though there was some weird fucked up stuff before, like with her husband and stuff like that. It was already kind of weird.
It was weird.
But now it's all out on the surface. It's like the mission of this place, this town. You've got what you had to do. You kind of your mission is to kind of to go to take that back. But at the same time, it's a kind of case of like, well, does he want to do this?
Yeah.
Does he want to be a part of this? No. And also, like, the town is basically as a vessel or whatever it is kind of like, yeah, I don't need you guys, so you guys can fucking destroy each other now.
Yeah, they just turn on each other, and then we get two great scenes where he's the mob is kind of forming, and he reverses and he drives away, and he keeps driving. He drives to one point, and then like Styles does that weird kind of like spider walk, which is fucking bogging, where her like
I really liked those
down.
kind of bits. Those bits did remind me of that kind of thing style of that kind of morphing, twisting body horror kind of in that way. I liked that scene of him like driving, because he's like just smashing through it. He's like, I gotta get out of here. But obviously you've got the mob coming towards him, but then you had that same bit in his like nightmare, his whatever, like his fantasy, whatever they were, like when he was seeing them, of like when you got the reveal properly of the police officer who now looks himself mutated as he's beating the person, and the mob starts to burn in him, so it's like something he's already kind of seen, and then obviously because he drives off, but then he ends up back.
He just keeps ending up back.
Yeah, he keeps coming back and being like, "What the fuck?" And then he keeps seeing the mob coming closer and closer as he's getting there, and that built some proper tension there. I thought some proper like, what the fuck? Like, how do you get out of this kind of thing? Because this is the kind of thing. I would almost say one thing that I was a little bit. I understand the whole idea of the madness and that he's kind of telling the story back and how it became. I do think that scene at the beginning takes away a lot of the tension that comes later on, because this very much feels like a mission of someone who is doomed. And I think it's like in The Wicker Man, if we started by showing him burning in The Wicker Man. It's like it takes the tension out of, I know that he's, for the most part anyway, going to be fairly, he might be bad, that's fine. Yeah. But I think the dread could have been better by cutting that first scene out of the film. And as much as the whole dragon coming in, I found it generally like fine, but a little bit hammy, a little bit cheesy. Yeah. It then throws off the next scene because that's not the way it is, and we're kind of seeing it back. But I just think sometimes it's one of those tools used in films, and sometimes it does work because it's kind of not exactly what you're seeing. And yes, this isn't exactly what you're like seeing at the beginning. It is twisted a little bit, but I just didn't think it was enough, because I think anytime you have a film where it's a person going in to get something from a creepy, strange town, I think we should be left with the idea of how the fuck are you going to get out of this kind of thing. But because we knew the beginning, it kind of whaps the tension out of some of these scenes.
See, I disagree, because I kind of felt like it thematically it made perfect sense, because every time he goes through this, he is reversing and then driving the other way, and it's that idea of like, this is just going to repeat, because that's what you're doing until you accept your fate of delivering this, and he drives through them. Yeah, that's the point where it's like
that scene works great, and I think the tension in that works great. But I still think that first scene took out the idea of how's he going to get out of this, because we knew he was going to get out of this at some point. I knew he needed to accept it. Yeah. But at the same time, it still would have been nice to feel like there was a little bit more tension as to whether his character is actually going to properly make it through this, out of this town. Well, I think it ups the ante for people. It makes them feel a little bit more tension, a little bit more suspense in that kind of scene. Then we know you're going to be alright. We don't know about everyone else. We don't know about Linda and stuff like that. So we've got other characters who are like, yeah, well, actually it's just Linda. We don't really give a shit about anyone else. Like, we don't really get to know anyone else enough to kind of really care, I think, is kind of the thing. So I think it's just Linda and just him. And it's just kind of, so because I had that at the beginning, it kind of made me feel like I didn't have to worry too much about his character. Linda, I didn't really care too much anyway. Like, the scenes when she was doing stuff was like cool. But from the second she started talking, I felt like she was kind of doomed character anyway. And it was John Carpenter, so I was like, someone's got to be like fucked up and things like that. And I know it's not going to be your character, so it has to be Linda's character. It was these assumptions I was able to jump to because of that beginning. You see what I mean? That's why I didn't like it in that way.
Well, as we always say on the show, it's perfectly fine for us to disagree. Though we hope that you enjoyed the episode and you enjoyed the podcast, because it is officially over. It's over. We are no longer friends. We cannot disagree on one thing. It's not allowed. It's over. Goodbye.
It's done.
Yeah. But I like that, and then he kind of like he gets back. He just appears once he's accepted his fate of like, I have to deliver this, and that's the only way I'm getting out. He then appears back in reality. You know, Hobbs, the town of Hobbs is gone. It's like never on the map. And then I think this is where we get a scene that I fucking absolutely loved, and I'm pretty sure it's kind of now, because he says like, where's the way to the highway, to some little girl, and he ends up kind of like going back, and I think he's getting a bus back into New York or whatever, and he's chatting to some old woman, and then he falls asleep.
Yeah, he has the vision at that point.
And Sutter Cane sat next to him like saying, you've got to deliver this manuscript, is what I've written you to do. And then he's like, I just won't deliver it. And then Sutter Cane says the line, did I tell you my favourite colour is blue? And then when it cuts back, the whole colour filter of the rest of the film has changed to be blue. It's like, it's this incredible bit where you're like, it's already, the game is already won by Sutter Cane, like, you're fucked, man.
Well, it's already done, because they already say, like, basically it cuts to the head, and basically that the manuscript's already been available for months, basically.
Well, that's the bit that I ended up having to go back to, because I was watching it. He gets back. I think he does try to like track down if Hobbs is a real town. I'm not too sure, but he ends up burning the thing, and then he goes and he speaks to the agent. He speaks to Charlton Heston,
Oh yeah.
Which is a really weird appearance. Yeah. He says, you have to steal this manuscript from my cold dead hands. And he's like, what do you mean? You already gave it to me 17 months ago.
Yeah.
And I kind of had to rewind it, and I was like, what?
Yeah, it's an interesting part, because there's a little kind of twist, because it shows how kind of out of reality he has been for this whole time. Like, how much he is kind of going closer to that madness, I guess. You kind of see. And it does make you question, like, everything that's happened. Like, who has he seen? Has anyone, like, seen him? Has he just been gone this whole time? Like, did he go off and basically it took him that long to actually get back, and he's been stuck somewhere? Was he stuck in that odd reality for such a long time? So that's one of the part of the twist that I thought was quite like, oh, okay, it does make you re-question the whole film again. Of like, where or what or how long has this actually taken place? How long were you in these certain scenes? How long were you with Sutter Cane? How long was the town stuck again, like in this kind of non-stop like abyss of like what they were in?
And I don't know, it's this fucking like, it's a real mindfuck, I thought. And it's that whole thing of that the game was rigged against you from the start, Like, you are one of his characters. He wrote you to come and deliver this.
Yeah.
And it, like, what I particularly kind of, one thing that I love about it, and I think like John Carpenter has this very weird way of, like, I don't want to call him like Nostradamus, but when you look at like They Live, and you look at its message on consumerism, where the world is now, and then you look at this film, and the idea behind it is that, or at least my understanding, is that Sutter Cane is kind of trying to free this monstrous kind of race, the old ones they're called, and the idea is that the more people that believe in them, the more power they will have, and eventually they will be able to break into the world and doom humanity.
Yeah.
And it's this idea that it's like it's amusing, if I may say so, on the idea of like belief. If you think about like, to an extent, if you think about like most of the laws that we have come from some form of belief system, like back in the day, Ten Commandments,
rules, stuff like that.
And even like if you look like at like stuff that's happening in the news, and if you look at like what's on social media, people will believe stuff when it's clearly fake news, and that will kind of change the reality. And I loved that the idea behind this was that this book is changing people's reality and is bringing these old ones in. And we already know that through the conversations and what's been happening that Sutter Cane has this effect on people. They keep saying it, and the next one, you know, In the Mouths of Madness, is going to be the final one. That's going to be what tips it over. It's
going to drive the world to that final kind of, the whole world's going to change because of it.
And then you have the horror of knowing you destroyed this, you think you're safe. Well, actually, no. You're like, you already delivered it. Like, it's already happened. You can't undo it now. Yeah. All of your best efforts were just undermined completely without you being aware.
It definitely felt like this is like, as you said, like John Carpenter with consumerism and They Live, or you know the way he attacks presents in different ways. Different films tend to have some kind of little message that I think you find with John Carpenter, that he's not just coming from a this is just the film. He's normally trying to put something else into his films.
Yeah,
but the idea of religion with this one is definitely the idea of I think the negative effects that religion can have on people's perspectives in life, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think it is right front and center. That was the main thing that I took from it, was the idea that he is pushing the idea that, you know, things like this, yes, fantastic, that the books in some ways can bring people together, and these things can bring people together, but at the same time they can also divide people in the biggest of ways, or change people in ways that other things can't quite do it the same way that maybe a religion does. I think they seem to have, like, certain religions or certain ideas within a religion seem to divide, and like the world even right now still applies to that rule of what the hell's going on.
But it's a really weird thing, and then you get that you get like the cycle of, now I get the agent at the start, because he's like, the book's already been released, I gotta start fucking stopping people.
Yeah, the film's almost out. Like the film's almost is in post-production or something.
And it's it's like the last efforts of this man to fucking don a trench coat and an axe and try and kill everyone who is buying it before they read it.
That kind of,
comes back round to the idea that the agent was trying to kill him to stop him delivering it.
And now he's killing people with the altered eyes.
Yeah, the altered eyes.
And kills the guy with the bleeding altered eyes that are like in the.
Yeah.
He just starts axing that bitch down.
And then obviously he gets fucking slammed up.
But he knows where it's going. I guess, like, he knows where he's the only one that knows there, and then this is his descent back into the madness that we've seen.
And then we get that's kind of when we get to the end of the scene. We've caught up with the story that he was telling at the start when he's in the cell, and we get we get this really cool kind of like part on the radio that says, he like, people are starting to become more violent. What's going on? And then even one of the people even says to the main psychiatrist, or even the guy who interviews him, like, "Oh, do you read Sutter Cane?" It's really fucking like, it spreads through word of mouth. Everyone's like, "Have you fucking read this book?"
It's in every like little bit, or mentioned in every like little part. It seems to just be a running kind of, everything seems to be Sutter Cane in some way, or everything seems to be about the book. Like, you hear little teases on different parts. And then obviously that leads to the end of the conversation, but also then the fact that in the middle of the night something comes, the creatures come back or whatever they are, to kill the people in the psychiatric office or whichever part he's in, and then releases him so that he is free to go to the cinema.
I love that bit where he is walking through effectively like the empty streets of New York. Like, humanity's fucked, man. Everything's blue, Sutter Cane's favourite colour. Like, everything's fucked. And he has now kind of been accepted it. He's like, well, it's over. And then he goes to the film. He goes to see the film, But
then the film is reliving him. It's him as it like is. He's reliving himself. So it's one of those bits where it could have been like, it's the film, but it's like an actor playing basically what he was. But instead we just see him which then again just makes you question what reality are we in?
Because he keeps repeating, "This is reality."
Is any of this happen? Like, has any of this actually happened? Did he ever even escape the town in the like? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
like this is obviously the way that Sutter Cane taken it, but there are many parts in the film, including the crash that happens earlier in the film before they've even kind of got to that part. They have like the little crash where it's all kind of like. They could have just died then. That could have just been what happened. They never even made it. This is all just made up in their brain, or he's in a coma somewhere. He's fucked up. You know what I mean? Like, there are so many different ways that you could take the way that this could have gone. He got to the town, but then actually it was not the way it was expected. Or, you know what I mean? Or that he's still stuck in the town and he's still there, and this is all just still part of his warped reality, and this isn't actually the end of the world. Or it is the end of the world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel like there are several different ways that you can take it, but with these kind of films, those were all positive things. Those are things that it should be. These kind of films should be where you leave it and you're like, I don't even fully know if I understood that completely.
No.
And lots of people would hate that. But it's
what
these films should be. And it's if you're doing something inspired by H.P. Lovecraft, then it's kind of what it should be. Because that doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, I've read
I've
read some.
If you've read some like parts, or even if you've heard of the types of story he tells, you'd probably be aware that these things don't make sense. These creatures don't make sense. These are beyond the expectation of reality.
Yeah.
They're meant to be outside of our reality, and it's all very, confusing in that way. And that's exactly what this kind of should be, because this is meant to be like a love letter to that, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the idea. I mean, somebody once, I'm not sure what it was, but I was watching a video, and they described like the way in which cosmic horror is kind of supposed to be. And they basically said, like, imagine if you got a chicken, right? And in a split second, you gave it the sentience of a human.
Yeah.
And you gave it the knowledge of everything that's ever happened to humanity. And it completely understood, like, it could understand what people were saying. It could understand that, like, people live in these systems. People, have all of these societal norms and stuff like that. And then in the same split second, it went back to being a chicken and having the understanding of it. And it would be terrified, but it wouldn't know what exactly it's terrified of. But it's terrified of something bigger than itself. And it's a really weird analogy, but it kind of helps you to be like, part of it you're not supposed to comprehend. It's supposed to speak to this kind of horror inside of you that you can't really put into words. You can only feel,
like existential questions that are around us all the time. Why are we here? Is there a higher power? Is Robbie going to wake up with his nuts in a vice?
Yeah, of course. Like, maybe, I don't know.
These are all those parts. To be fair, with the chicken, I was literally expecting you to basically say that the second it realizes, understand, like the second it gets a second to kind of take all of that in, it's like
snaps its neck.
Yeah, it's just going to kill it.
I'm off.
That's what I mean. Like, I literally, if you implanted that, I feel like the first thing they would do is like, this is fucked.
Yeah,
just kill himself.
I'm off, mate.
Like, it just because you have to take that in. We as humans get many, many years in order to develop, understand, realize there's nothing we can do. Go into depression, realize we can encase that depression in small moments of happiness. And that's being an adult.
Yeah, that's being an adult, And
that I feel like that kind of wraps up.
I think it does. I mean,
brings in a nice happy circle.
Happy circle. I mean, I'm pleased that we watched it so quickly, because we did say literally like a couple of episodes ago, I want to watch that.
There are many films in our background where we say, we'll get around to that. Probably not.
No.
This time we did it because I mean, to be fair, John Carpenter is a slightly different deal there, because we both love John Carpenter.
Both love
the Carpenter. You know what I mean? So if there is one we haven't seen, and I was kind of like looking, going like, if there's certain John Carpenter films, and actually I'm surprised that I feel like I have seen the majority. Don't think I've seen all of the Escape from films. I don't think I've seen
Escape from New York, Fox.
Yeah, I don't
LA's
think I've seen.
Not as bad as people say it is, but it has like one awful moment, but you've got like Steve Buscemi in it. You've got some okay stuff. It's nowhere near as bad as people say. That one particular scene is fucking awful. And you'll know it. You'll watch it and you'll be like, John, like, are you okay?
What happened here?
I liked vampires as well. I thought that film fucked. I went into it thinking it would be really bad.
Yeah.
And then it was very weird, but we had fucking James Woods, who I would not expect just being an absolute badass. and just like fucking people smoking cigarettes.
He was. I still couldn't quite accept James Woods as the bounce. I think it was part of my problem was the fact that he just didn't feel like, to me. I see James Woods and I just think pervert.
That's exactly it. Like it should have been like Kurt Russell,
Yeah. It felt like it would have been, but they were like, they don't want to do this at this point. Like, who do we have?
James Woods.
Yeah, pretty big, I guess. He did Videodrome like 10 years ago. I guess he's alright.
Yeah, we get it with his really long head.
I remember. It was alright to me. It was kind of action packed, but it definitely was not one of his strongest to me. It didn't have the nice context or more interesting themes in there. It kind of just felt kind of like Ghost of Mars when you watch that one.
Yeah,
it kind of just felt a little bit like. And as I said, I don't hate Ghost of Mars. It just literally is basically what it says. It's like weird people that run around Mars and throw stuff at the guys, and they have to run from it. And that's basically what the film is.
Well, he's back with Suburban Screams or whatever it is.
That's like a documentary series.
Docudrama.
Docudrama. Yeah, it's where.
But he's directing.
Has he directed? Yeah, okay.
And it might lure him back.
I think that's already out. I think because it's on a random network, so it's not like Netflix or anything like that. It's on a random American one, so you can just find it by searching. But
we'll find it.
That one's just like real life horror stories that he's
like adapting.
It's
as
like,
they tell along.
What is it? Night Watch or Crime Watch? Or
it's kind of like Crime Watch.
He's kind of done that.
Let's hope he doesn't get shot on his doorstep. Rip Giordano.
We know who's been watching certain Netflix
documentaries. We have. Sum up your thoughts on In the Mouths of Madness.
I mean, it correctly to the right level kind of makes you confused about what's going on at points. And that I'm not going to put that as a negative because I feel like that's what it does. I think it is a kind of film that you need to go in with the expectation and you need to be in the mindset. And maybe that was the case. Maybe I wasn't fully in the mindset to be like, I want to watch a film that I understand what's happening. I'm not in the mood for a film right now that's like boggling my mind. But for some reason, I think I just jumped right in one night. So I was just like, yeah, let's just go for it. And I think maybe I wasn't quite fully there to be like, okay, I've completely got this. But, there were lots of scenes I like. As I said, I just didn't quite feel the tension of the film for me. And and some of the the performances and stuff, and for me it came down to I often quite like when John Carpenter kind of builds kind of the characters, and although they were quirky and funny and things like that, I didn't really care too much for a lot of them. And I would have actually liked almost more delving into Sutter Cane than we actually got, kind of thing. But I get at the same time he is kind of meant to be like this enigma at the same time. So it's kind of a it's a balancing act with these kind of films, and I think there's lots of things that you like, and I understand why these films are always so divisive, and that's why it's kind of a mixed bag for me. I didn't fully love it. It's not one of my favourite of Carpenter's kind of thing, but it is I did still think it was an enjoyable kind of watch. A good film. Not a great film.
I really liked it. I thought I did think it was a great film. I thought it tickled that spot of kind of existential dread and what's going on, and kind of not really being able to comprehend it, but watching somebody's kind of slow descent into madness as you kind of can't quite figure out what's going on, and he's doomed and that sort of stuff. I thought visually it looked mostly good for the most part. I think Carpenter has a very distinct style in terms of the shots he uses, the color palette he uses. I did think that some of the bits did come off as slightly hokey. That was the main word that was kind of running through my head, predominantly when he was kind of running away from the old ones, but for the most part I think I did. I really enjoyed it. I think it would definitely be one that I watch again, but I think a repeated viewing will make me kind of think where it is in the Carpenter.
I definitely think I need. I would still watch it again. I think I need to watch it again to feel like I can fully decide on it. That's why I'm kind of mixed right now, because I don't know if maybe if I watched it again now that I've seen the whole thing play out, maybe I'd pick up on things that actually I'm I really like that, or if I'd be that didn't work the way that I thought it didn't work.
Well, we got round to In the Mouths of Madness finally. As always, come and let us know your thoughts on the John Carpenter 1994. I won't say classic, but I'll say cult classic. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at CMTH Podcast. Remember to hit that subscribe button and please leave us a lovely review. We've already written it, that you will leave us a lovely review. You can't get past it because it's already there. You've already did it 17 months ago. Just remember to do it again. And we will see you next week. Goodbye.